Do you think that this is a no ifs, no buts? Those flights are going to take off?
I think it's likely that at this point, the government will be able to get at least one flight to Rwanda. I do think it's much less likely that it will have the deterrent effect the government wants, and that they'll be able to operate this scheme at scale, which is what the government originally intended.
I mean, this is the thing. It just doesn't really work unless it's supposed to be modelled on the Australia scheme, which is, you basically, if you come on the boat, people arriving in Australia, you come to the shores, you are never setting foot on Australia proper. You're going to be processed and dealt with elsewhere. And they did it en masse, and it did stop the boats. A lot of people said it was very cruel, but it did the job. There is no real intention in this scam, that's a fair word, actually, scheme, for it to do that. We're looking at Rwanda have only agreed to really take 500 people. That's a day's worth of arrivals. We've got plans to talk to other countries. Some of those are ongoing, possibility of more people being sent. But we've also got, tens and tens of thousands of people who've been in this country for a number of years claiming asylum who wouldn't even be covered by this scheme. So even if this got off the ground, these flights, and even if they started taking some serious numbers, even a few thousand people, it still doesn't touch the sides of the issue, does it?
I think, indeed, that's exactly one of the key problems with the scheme. In order for it to have any deterrent effect, I think at the very minimum, it would need to be operated at a very wide scale. We've got, I think, around just over 70,000 asylum applications since 7th of March, when the illegal migration bill was introduced, and when initially that was when the Rwanda plan was meant to operate from. So we've got all those people in this big backlog just kind of waiting at the moment, unclear what's going to happen to them. This is what we've described as kind of perma backlog, because they're basically kind of stuck in the asylum system. If they don't get removed to Rwanda, then what happens to them? It's not clear. And as you say, only likely to be a few hundred people in the first couple of flights who are going to be removed. Perhaps they'll be able to get up a steady rhythm over time, but it's very unlikely to match the scale of people arriving in the UK. And in which case, the chances of people actually being sent are quite low. So it's very unclear why that would have a significant deterrent effect.
And that's
people,
the key thing, isn't it? It's you're playing the odds when you're getting on one of those dinghies as it is. People are playing the odds, even leaving their home countries and making their way across Europe. Once you've played those sort of odds, these are pretty good odds you're going to be allowed to stay. We've also had reports over the weekend that actually a lot of the people who are going to be told, you're going to be on the list, because the Prime Minister did say, as soon as this bill is passed, MPs will stay up all night if they have to defeat this latest challenge from the House of Lords in this ping pong. He says people will begin being detained straight away. But we already know that an awful lot of people are just absconded. They just disappear into the system. People arriving in the future will just disappear into the black market. Of course, they are then at risk of modern slavery and goodness knows what, and criminality and etc. So this kind of doesn't really solve the problem. But do you think that the legal challenges will now be over? Because the Prime Minister said no foreign court will stop us getting Rwanda flights off the ground. They've got 500 people ready to escort these people. They'll be detained immediately. Do you think that the era of the foreign challenges, so the court challenges, and indeed, as you said, foreign courts, is now over?
No, I don't actually. I think that the government obviously have closed off some of the legal challenges through this new bill, but there are potentially still individual legal challenges that could be brought, and indeed we see a interim measure under Rule 39 from the European Court of Human Rights. Now, the government is indicating that it's going to ignore that, but that would be a significant move, because that would, I think, arguably be breaching one of the tenets of the European Convention of Human Rights. And so, that's going to be contested and controversial. So I think there's going to be ongoing legal issues with this, even if this bill does go through.
Well, and indeed, again, it should go through tonight. But again, I remember having this exact same conversation on air last week. They said, it's going to be law by Friday, and then it wasn't. Let me just read you a response to what the Prime Minister had to say this morning from Labour's Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. She's responding to Rishi Sunak's comments. She said, the Rwanda scheme is an extortionate gimmick. It will cost over £500 million to send just 300 people to Rwanda. That's less than 1% of asylum seekers, with no plan for the other 99%. That money should be going in into boosting border security instead, which she says is Labour's plan. The Prime Minister knows this scheme won't work. That's why he tried to cancel it when he was Chancellor, and why even now he won't say how many people will be on the token flights. Do you agree with her?
Well, as I've said, I think the plan is very costly. I think it's impractical and unlikely to work. I think with the pressure now is, okay, what's the alternative? And we've proposed a number of other options. I mean, part of it, I think, is about tackling people smuggling, but I think another part of it is about ensuring that you've got safe routes to divert people away from these dangerous crossings. Another part is about working closely with France and with Europe to manage people's asylum claims, so that people can, for instance, claim asylum in France before
they do,
even
but
often
one of the reasons why people throw their documentation away is because they have already made asylum claims elsewhere and been rejected. Well, you know, everyone's got this idea that if only someone could think of having the brilliant idea of having a nice friendly chat with Emmanuel Macron or you know, Ursula von der Leyen, and then we can solve this problem. This is a crisis across the whole of the EU. The EU isn't even working well with some of its own constituent members, you know, the Hungarys, the Italys, the Greece. They're dealing with this crisis on their shores. Now, I mean, and on their borders. I mean, the idea that, oh, if only we could all work together. The EU plan, which Keir Starmer wants to sign up to, by the way, is basically an exchange scheme. They will take our quote, fair share. I mean, most of the EU members don't want to sign up to that.
Well, the EU has made progress on the asylum pact, and I think the plan which would involve cooperation with the EU, it would depend on the details. So there's no requirement necessarily, for instance, for the UK government to accept a certain share of asylum seekers. There would be a number of different options available. For instance, paying into the scheme, other types of operational help. So I think there are options available for the UK to cooperate with our partners that don't necessarily involve the kind of, you know, proposals that some of
my view is
last year.
You could have any of these. You could have any of these measures. At the end of the day, people are still going to be getting on those boats, so we're still going to have the problem. Marley Morris, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. She's from the Institute for Public Policy Research.